virtual conference for educators. I want to dedicate tonight to the folks in Boulder, Colorado and in Atlanta, Georgia. One of our speakers is actually going to talk about the importance of teaching socio-political issues to gifted and TUI kids and how to do that, and it couldn't be more timely. Our hearts and our minds go out to everybody who are affected by these tragedies. I'm Julie Skolnick, and I'm the founder of With Understanding Comes Calm and the producer of the Let's Talk TUI virtual conferences for parents, teachers, and clinicians. I love guiding, mentoring, and supporting my parent, teacher, and TUI adult clients. And I love bringing experts together at our conferences to help educate these stakeholders. In addition, at our conferences, we always feature a full exhibitor hall that remains in the on-demand experience, as well as numerous and awesome, let me tell you, awesome free speaker gifts. So FYI, the conference is still at the discounted rate of $127. And again, you can find it at letstalktui.com or withunderstandingcomescalm.com and clicking on the Let's Talk TUI icon in the menu. Once you purchase the conference, guess what? You own it forever. It never expires and it remains on demand for you. We like to say, watch what you want, when you want, because we know teachers are so busy, and particularly now with the virtual, hybrid, high flex, in-person learning, you're feeling like you're doing the work of 2 or 3 people more than ever. So the idea for tonight and our Let's Talk TUI 4-part series is to bring some of the conference speakers to you so you can ask questions and discuss important topics about TUI learners. One of the many cool things about our Let's Talk TUI Tuesdays is that they are totally free and open to the public worldwide. So feel free, literally right now, to reach out and invite your friends and colleagues, tweet about it, use the hashtag Let's Talk TUI, take screenshots and post whatever we need to do to get the word out about these free broadcasts to support teachers and help TUI learners. And by the way, now that you're here, our Let's Talk TUI Facebook page, the Teachers Lounge, is open to anyone at any time from around the world. It's a place to share ideas with other teachers, come together, support one another, and learn about relevant topics. If you're watching live and you want to put where you're from in the chat right now, that would be awesome. It's so fun to see where people are from. Feel free also to put questions or comments in the chat, and this is a great time for me to thank Victoria Rose Super, whom I affectionately refer to as my frontal lobe, because she's actually our media strategist, and she will be responding and commenting in the chat as me and letting me know when you ask questions. So, without further ado, this is our second panel in our 4-part series of the Let's Talk TUI Tuesdays. They are always the last Tuesday of the month, and they parallel the 4 strands of our conference: understanding TUI, classroom strategies, that's today's topic, cultural diversity, and clinical considerations. If you missed our first Let's Talk TUI Tuesday with Drs. Susan Baum, Dr. Matt Zagreski, and Diane Allen, the video is in the feed of the Teachers Lounge Facebook page. Just scroll down. It's also in the conference listed along with the amazing free gifts from our speakers. So tonight, as I said, we're focusing on classroom strategies, and I have some wonderful experts and colleagues with me here today. So when I introduce you guys, just give a little wave so everybody knows who you are and where you are in our little Brady Bunch squares. So Seth Perler's mission is to give parents, educators, and others who help kids honest, practical, and unconventional approaches to helping complicated, struggling students, and to teach the world about executive function, which he says is at the root of student struggles. I think of Seth actually as like the executive functioning king. That's how I think of him. Seth works directly with students and teachers on strengthening executive functions and produces the Executive Function Online Summit, also known as TFOS, and that's coming your way in August. Seth's session at the Let's Talk TUI conference is supporting struggling TUI students with executive function. Welcome, Seth. Our next speaker is Colin Seal. Give us a wave. He was born and raised in Brooklyn, New York, where his struggles gave birth to his passion for educational equity. Using his experience as a math teacher, later an attorney, and now a keynote speaker and author of Thinking Like a Lawyer, a framework for teaching critical thinking to all students, Colin founded Think Law, an award-winning organization that helps educators close the critical thinking gap through powerful, practical instructional strategies and curricular resources. Think Law just launched their family experience to empower families with critical thinking and accelerated learning tools. Colin's session at the Let's Talk 2E Educator Conference is low floor, high ceiling, concrete strategies to unlock excellence in all students. Next up is Joan Green. Give us a wave. After Joan spent time working in hospitals, rehabilitation centers, schools, and home care, she formed innovative speech therapy in the Washington, D.C. area in 1992 so that she could provide top quality rehabilitative and intervention services using her unique approach, combining cutting-edge technology with individualized action plans. I definitely reach out to Joan when I have any technology questions at all. In addition to providing one-to-one therapy, professional development, and online webinars and courses, Joan has published 4 books, including her most recent best-selling publication, Assistive Technology in Special Education, Resources to Support Literacy, Communication, and Learning Differences. Joan's session is Technology to the Rescue, 10 Tech Treasures to Help 2E Students Thrive. Next up is Dr. Kate Bachtel. Give us a wave. Kate received her master's in education from CU Boulder with an emphasis in equity, multicultural, and bilingual education. She also earned a doctorate in education focusing on curriculum and instruction with a specialization in gifted from the University of Denver. Kate launched her service, Soul Spark Learning, a nonprofit dedicated to optimizing the development and well-being of youth and the educators who care for them. She is also a contributing author to a forthcoming book on 2E. Her chapter is titled Trauma-Induced Twice Exceptionality, Preventing Psychological Injury of Gifted Children in the Classroom. Kate lives in Boulder, Colorado, and yesterday's tragedy pretty much happened in her own backyard. Again, our hearts go out to you, Kate. Thank God your family is safe, but we know everybody is shaken. We're so appreciative of you joining us tonight, Kate, and very apropos, Kate's session at Let's Talk 2E is called From Social to Socio-Political Development for Achievement and Mental Health. So with all of that, let's get to our questions. I have lots of questions for everybody. I'm going to start with Seth. My question for you, my first question, is as we're thinking about where we are in the world, virtually, hybrid, high flex, I'm getting lots of questions from teachers asking about how do I incorporate executive functioning skills virtually versus in person, or when some of my students are in person and some of my students are virtually. So what do you say to that?
Yeah, well, I'll give you a quick answer and then we can all unpack it as much as you want. But the first thing that I want to say about how to do that is to forget everything you think you know about anything. Forget everything you think you know about education. Remember that this is a system that we created, we designed it, we can recreate it, we can change it. Things don't have to be the way they are. We don't have to have letter grades. We don't have to have classes arranged the way they're. Now, that's not a practical answer for those of you that are working within a system, but I do want you to just contemplate that, forget everything you know. And my encouragement is to go from the frame of what do these kids need rather than how do I do it in the context of this system. You'll have to figure that out later, but just start there with your gut, because I think there's a lot of parents and teachers where we're having a gut feeling, but there is pressure to not necessarily follow that gut feeling from the powers that be or society or culture or blah, blah, blah. And to really, that voice is always there. So to hear that voice and listen to it and see how you can then, once you're saying, okay, this is what I believe these kids need, then you can start to think about how now to teach those, like incorporate executive function skills or whatever you're trying to do. Second thing I have to say is for all you teachers watching is to do an FAQ, an exhaustive FAQ on every single email you ever do and everywhere you connect with parents and stuff. The reason I say that is because one of the biggest problems that I see is that parents don't know what the expectation is or what's going on. They're emailing teachers. They can't rely on their kids to tell them the expectation. The kids aren't clear on it. We don't know where, duplicate copies of something are, or how long they should be spending on the homework. What if it's taking them 40 minutes and there's only a 10-minute assignment, and all of these things that you're probably hearing questions over and over, teachers. And any question that you hear over and over should be in that FAQ, because I want families to be able to access the expectations easily. And I want them to know where you're flexible and where you're not flexible, and all these things. There's just so much frustration, confusion. Everybody's burnout right now. Everybody's always burnout now anyway, because it's spring fever time. So that's what happens. Teachers burn out, parents are burnt out, kids are burnt out. Everyone's ready for summer break. That's what's happening right now. But this year is different. It is worse than it's ever been. I have more kids, quote, failing. Now, failing is, again, in the context of these systems that we have, but more than ever. And people are suffering, people are frustrated, people are overwhelmed. So do an FAQ and answer all the questions so that people aren't constantly confused and looking. It happens a lot. The next thing I want to say about executive function is direct instruction. I'm going to give you one example. One thing we often do is, let's take an example of a middle or high school. They buy planners for the whole entire school. You got 1,000 kids, they buy 1,000 planners, give them the exact same cookie cutter planner with a periodic table and commonly misspelled words and the school handbook in the front and all this crap that doesn't mean anything, that doesn't have to do with learning the very complicated skills of planning. So we need to not just say, hey, here's your planner, use it. But these kids who have, let's use the term strong executive function naturally, they pick up on this stuff over the years. They've been working on it. They've been adding to those skill sets, but these kids have not. The kids who struggle with it, goes in one ear and out the other. They really need direct instruction on executive function skills. Again, whether it's planning or any other, that's just a very common example where we really need to compassionately, empathetically, and mindfully teach these skills of how do you use this thing? Why does this even matter? And then the last thing I want to say is about scaffolding. This concept of scaffolding, where, again, in my world, in the executive function world, we have kids who don't have these skills that they're expected to have at certain ages to accomplish all the things they're supposed to do. And we really have to, again, compassionately and empathetically start from where they're at and build them from there. Again, let's use just the planner as one example. Like, they really may start off at a place where they're saying, I hate planners. I don't need them. I keep it in my head. I'll remember it. I'm good. Well, then you're scaffolding from right there. And you're getting a baby step, a micro step, using lectures and logic and shame and reason and punishments and rewards and all this stuff to get them to use a planner does not get them to learn a skill that they need for their life. So how do we scaffold it from where they're at, compassionately, empathetically, maybe even playfully, with fun and smiles on our faces, and make it, it's not that heavy. We don't have to make this stuff all heavy. We can actually have joy and stuff. That's all I got.
I love it. I love it. So 4 points from Seth. Number 1, I love, because I always say that I give parents permission to parent differently and teachers permission to teach differently. And you just said the same thing. You're giving everybody permission to teach differently, which is super important. So number 1 is absolutely throw everything out the window and look at the kid who's in front of you. And then the FAQs, at first I was like, what does he mean? That's an amazing idea, because so many parents, I also tell parents, divorce yourself from homework. It's a battle. But wouldn't it be great if they could just be sort of like the ambassador of homework, where they're just like answering the questions that teachers are asking, and then direct instruction, taking that kid in front of you and making sure that you're looking at where they are and going from there, and scaffolding. So teaching those lagging skills. Amazing. So thank you for that, Seth. I may circle around with another question for you, but I want to move on and being mindful of the time, and everybody has so much awesome stuff to share. So thank you, Seth. That was really awesome. Colin, I'd like to ask you, you're like the critical thinking guy. I love it, because I'm sort of a recovering lawyer, but I do love critical thinking in every way. My husband doesn't always love my critical thinking, but that's a whole other topic. So, I want to hear what your response would be to how educators can teach critical thinking to students of different ages. Is it all the same, or do you have to do it sort of differently?
So I think when we talk about this whole process, can we just agree on one thing? Can we agree that like when these creatures come out of the womb, they're already critical thinkers? Can we just acknowledge the fact that when they're looking at the world and everything is like in wonder and complete amazement and excitement, that like they're already there? So let's calm it down for a second and humble ourselves. We ain't teaching nothing that they don't already have a foundation for. What we need to actually think about what we do is how schooling takes away from that capacity to be a critical thinker. Think about what happens when a kid who's why, 8,000 times a day. And I think I counted it one time, because one time I was driving my daughter to the gym, it's 5 minutes away, and I'm like, yo, seriously, that's 30 something questions I just asked. She just 35 questions in 5 minutes. So if you do that math, I mean, it's a lot of questions. But at a certain point, we tell them to just stop. We tell them to just chill out with all that. And then we wonder where their curiosity goes. And I'm going to go deeper with this, you know. And Julie, if you could just stay with me with this for 1 second, all right?
Yeah.
I'm gonna do a quick example, and I want you to be like the sarcastically good teacher. I want you to be the teacher for me who like thinks that they're doing the right thing because it's kind of the thing that seems helpful and whatever have you. So like, I've got a table with 4 seats. 1 of the seats are taken. What fraction of the seats are not taken? Okay, 4 seats. 1 is taken. What fraction are not taken? And Miss Koenig, I did the assignment and I put 1/4. The right answer is actually 3/4, right? But I put 1/4 and I am angry because I'm like, Miss Koenig, I did this right. Why'd you mark this off? I want you to give me the sarcastic good teacher response to why I got that off.
Well, because it's wrong.
Okay.
Number 1.
So what did I do wrong?
Well, the question was, how many seats are left? And that's 3/4.
Okay. So right there, right? Like you could have said that. You could have went and like, oh, look at it carefully. You see that word not? What does not mean? So you forgot the not. And we might think that that's good stuff. We might think that, okay, like, well, we're helping you out. But you know what really helped me out? Tell me to sit my behind down and I figure it out. You know what really helped me out? Tell me, what did you do? Just explain what you did. Because maybe just me explaining it will allow me to catch it. Why are you robbing me of my aha? If I don't get to go, aha, light bulb, explosion, then why am I doing this? That adrenaline, that's what gets me hooked. So if you think about reading The Gingerbread Man, guess what? It hits the fan when the gingerbread man comes to the river, right? So what if we press pause right there, like, listen, what do you think is about to go down right here? What do you think is going to happen? What do you think he's thinking? What do you think other people are thinking? And we ask them to start to piece together the puzzle. Now they're so excited about what comes next and making inferences and making predictions, and we're making that into what we're doing. But if I'm teaching calculus and I've got 2 different differential equations and they're both done wrong, and I've now had an argument about which one is more right, I could bring that same drama in this class in calculus. So what we've got to do is we've got to figure out, how do we take our kids as they are, what they're into, and use that as the hook to spark that imagination. This is universal. I would say it's really easy to do if we make it a priority to do it. We could do it with our own content. We don't have to overthink it. What I push teachers on is, can you find 1 topic per unit, right? Don't even overwhelm yourself. 1 topic per unit that lends itself better to critical thinking. It might even be a test review. Instead of playing that tired Jeopardy game that nobody really enjoys, right? Rest in peace, Alice Trebek, but nobody enjoys playing Review Jeopardy, right? It's just the same kind of rote memorization kind of deal. Why not do a thing where you just did a unit in US history, rank the characters from the most shady to the least shady that you just covered. Kids got opinions on who's shady, right? When I did world history, I'm like, this Napoleon guy is highly questionable, right? So why not give our kids a chance to get into that funk? That would be my advice. Like, really find that funk, leverage the critical thinking potential our kids already are bringing to the table.
So you're really talking about sort of agency, creating agency, where we think on our own. What a concept. And it's very
power. We can't talk about equity in education if we don't talk about power. We can't talk about, we say we empower. We ain't empowering nobody. Our kids already have power. Can we allow them to actually use the plug that's there? Can we pay our electricity bill? They've got power, but can we just actually give them a chance to like do it by humbling ourselves and creating a space for them to shine? That's all we got to do.
You know,
Step back.
It's so funny, Colin. I literally just found my second grade report card, and it's literally Julie is outspoken and needs to sit down and be quiet and stop asking so many questions. I wrote an article for Mensa Foundation on this. It's coming out. You'll see it. It's exactly that. Like, stop being a critical thinker. Go from A to B and nowhere else. Yeah. Well, thank you for that.
No problem.
Yeah. Okay, people. Agency, aha moments. Okay, God, I could talk to each of you for hours. Actually, I did at the conference, but now I really want to again. We're gonna move on to Joan because I gotta get all the, and then I know there are questions in the chat. People who are putting questions in the chat, don't worry, I'm gonna circle around at the end and ask those questions of our awesome speakers. So Joan, I gotta ask you, you are a technology guru extraordinaire. Zoom fatigue. Oh, what are the best technology tips for enrichment and support for 2E learners when everybody's like, get me off the screen?
It's hard. I mean, I think, yeah, I don't want to, I know we're going to end up going over time, but I think what's really important is to, you know, in terms of the 2E learners, give them a way to compensate for what's hard. So now captioning is everywhere. I mean, it's free in Chrome. This just happened a few days ago. If you use the Chrome browser, you can enable live caption in your advanced settings, and it's free and everyone can use it. So that's amazing, you know, or, you know, and I think that if it's just reading from a textbook or listening to a lecture, that's not going to do it. You know, I mean, I think everybody just talks about active engagement, using the whiteboard, opening, you know, having small groups, finding things that make people really want to participate and be active. And then when they're doing projects and things, be off screen, you know, try to come up with physical activities out in nature where they can use their creative juices and come up with amazing projects and let them really focus on areas of interest.
So you're saying apply the technology to the technology you have to use, like enhance it, enrich it, support it for the stuff you got to do online. But as much as you can avoid being online, I just posted in, I think only one person commented. So guys, comment. I asked the question in the teacher's lounge, what are you doing to keep your kids off of a screen for homework? What's your non-screen homework plan? And I'd love for people to know what it is.
Right, building things, creating things. Yes, I mean, I find personally, I'm getting off my screen as much as I can. When I'm setting timers and things now, I set them, you know, without tech.
So are there other, besides captions, are there other things that we should know about, teachers should know about that they can enhance, enrich? Are there technology or sites that are great for enrichment tools and ideas that people can use then offline, or supports and enrichment online?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a particular site that I go to. I will give a shout out to Richard Byrne, because he teaches, if you go to free tech for teachers, there are all kinds of resources that are free that he really highlights, that social studies teachers and math teachers and history teachers, I don't tend to use those tools quite so much, but he's really creative with Google Maps and, you know, all these free Google tools. I tend to work more with the parents on the enriching activities that they can do to supplement school.
But that's really helpful. I'm sure people will want to use that, and I'm sure Victoria Rose has put that in the chat for people to see who it was.
And I just want to also mention the new ed tech classroom. So anybody that wants, I mean, that's how I learn all my stuff, are from these two people. It's Sam Carey at the new ed tech classroom and Richard Byrne at Free Tech for Teachers. Awesome. Because we can't go into all the tools, but they have amazing stuff out there, just bite-sized information for teachers, and it's all free stuff.
That's great. That's great. Thank you, Joan. So Kate, you know, the relevance of your topic, socio-political development or achievement in mental health, is, you know, the relevance is palpable. So I guess I want to ask you the why question. Why is incorporating socio-political issues in the classroom especially important for gifted and 2E kids?
Well, sociopolitical issues, it's in every classroom all the time. It's whether or not we're recognizing it. Like Colin said, right? Kids are keenly aware of power and where power resides and where these imbalances are, and especially empathic, gifted and twice exceptional students with highly refined nervous systems, right? They know when injustices occur. They're wired with social justice genes. And so it's in the classroom. It's a matter of whether or not we're addressing it or not, right? And so when you have someone who feels those injustices, feels those imbalances so deeply within their systems, and if they don't have a mechanism for making change, for creating change, for navigating those really complex, deep emotions, it does negatively affect our mental health, right? We need to be taught how to process these intense feelings, move them through, and be taught like effective advocacy and activism strategies, including education about biases, right? And as related to recent events, the news, it directs our attention so often, right? But oftentimes the issue that makes the biggest impression on us isn't necessarily the issue or that will have the biggest impact, right, on the well-being of a community. And so those are things we have to work consciously to address to be effective in our change efforts. And you think about the schools, within schools, we're teaching children a ton about power and their role in society just by how the adults in the building interact with each other and themselves. You know, to Colin's point, you know, kids come in with questions, a million questions, and the research shows by the time they, by the time they reach upper elementary, it's like the number of questions that student asks is versus the teacher is like almost all the questions are asked by the teacher by the time the students reach upper elementary school, right? Like Seth's work, so important, right? Like addressing executive function skill. And part of that, if you're looking at sociopolitical development, you're teaching kids how to navigate the system over time. And especially as of recent, high school especially is becoming increasingly executive function skill demanding. And it's sometimes contrary to learning and behavior science, right? The number of process-oriented demands are so overwhelming that it sometimes negatively impacts children's ability to actually integrate that learning and apply it in new contexts. So how are we as educators working to change that system, simultaneously teaching them how to navigate this system by teaching them the skills they need to be successful, right? And I think about it as related to our twice exceptional kids, especially, and gifted students who sometimes executive function skills we know can kick in later, right? Sometimes can put them at no matter how much we teach executive function skills, high school can be harder, right? Like I have 2 high school students right now, and grades, I will tell you, are oftentimes, more a reflection of students' executive function skill development than their content or conceptual understanding. I have students who have 95 percentile on the end of semester assessment who are getting D's because they haven't turned in the number of assignments or done the correct way. And contrastly, I have students that would be scoring in like the, highly twice exceptional students, maybe with just experiencing the world with dyslexia, who would be like in the lower quartile of a nationally standardized test, but yet are getting A's on their language arts assignments because they are submitting all their assignments on time in the way the teacher wants them. Those realities exist. And so we have the responsibility to teach both the skills and to teach them and to work simultaneously to change the system. Like Seth said, we're not tied to these systems. And the reality is in teacher prep programs, when you do then they've done research like Kumashiro on the, how many teacher prep programs that claim to be social justice oriented, almost none of them teach anti-oppressive practices. Right. So this is not something that we're taught as educators when we're going through teacher training.
What you're making me think of is sort of assumptions breed assumptions, right? So the kids assume they can't really ask questions. So because there's a goal, and if I don't get there, that's the goal. And so I'm not going to ask questions about how to use the planner, and I'm not going to ask questions about what's going on in the world because it's not on the list of what we're talking about today, put on the board, right? So, and then teachers maybe are making assumptions. If people aren't turning in their homework, they must not know, they're not paying attention, So now that was the why question. What's the how question? How do we, I don't know if you want to address, I guess part of it is, guys, to let go of assumptions that you got to talk about hard stuff in the class.
Well, realize, like you're saying assumptions, but part of it is that we're products of the systems and the communities that we're a part of, and acknowledging that. Like as teachers in the classroom, I'm in the classroom right now. I have standards, I have goals that I'm accountable for holding these teachers to. But I think where the shift can happen philosophically is if we think of instruction more as dialogue in partnership with students, right? Like I have these skills and skills and concepts that I want to teach, right? And maybe I'm making a plan for that. You know, Colin gave a math example, right? Like I maybe am teaching multiplication and multiplication story problems, right? And I have maybe a structure for that. But then something happens, like I'm with little students and maybe baby cows are born, right? This is not a sociopolitical issue, you know, forgive me, like, right? But the reality is like the kids are excited about the baby cows, right? And baby cows are in the classroom, whether we talk about them or not. So then, you know, my job is to listen to what the students are bringing into the classroom, what's in our environment, and then to quickly shift, right? Okay, so now I'm going to switch what I had planned, and we're going to make the multiplication story problem about baby cows, right? On the simple level, but also like longitudinally, I'm designing questions, like research, designing that instruction in partnership with students, ideally, right? So what are your questions? What are your most important questions? Those are conversations I'm having at the beginning of the year with students. You know, what are you curious to learn more about? Okay, so let's think about some primary source material we can connect you with that helps you answer these questions. And then how are you going to share or communicate your learning? And the reality is when we're working with gifted and price exceptional students, more often than not, the questions they're asking are related to humanitarian, to environmental, to social justice issues, right? And so then we can support them in, you know, when we're designing projects, we're supporting their executive function skill development within the context of meaningful learning. We're supporting their socio-political development. We're teaching them ways that they can share this learning with the community and different modes of communicating the learning, right? Because that's part of when you talk about twice exceptional learners, we don't oftentimes provide opportunities for multiple modes of communication. You know, Joan, like, you know, is talking about technological resources. A lot of our students have visual spatial communication strengths, and we tend to honor speaking, you know, written, verbal communication strengths more than we do other communication strengths and styles. And if we are doing more project-based learning, we can integrate and celebrate other student communication strengths too.
Well, and I appreciate that too, because one of the overarching questions I'm getting from teachers when I'm training teachers is how do we engage during this very weird time? And frankly, socio-political issues are a great way to engage. Like that is open discussion and critical thinking, the importance of asking the why and letting the kids really share what they're thinking and what they're feeling. So
and
thank you.
I just one more note as related to that, Julie,
Yeah.
is that like as a teacher, right, knowing that I'm still held accountable for standards, keep in mind, you can always reverse engineer that. I can tell you any project, anything that we're teaching, right, we can reverse engineer it and make sure that skills are, you know, that the skills needed are taught within the context.
Absolutely. And it'll be more fun anyway for everybody.
Yeah.
Okay, we have a question in the chat for Colin saying, I'm seeing students struggle with grit and perseverance with critical thinking. Any suggestions? I'm seeing students struggle with grit and perseverance.
Yeah, so I struggle with grit and perseverance, especially when I don't care about the task, right? And I think that the thing that's overrated about grit is we spend so much more time thinking about why we're not seeing grit versus whether or not there's actually a reason in which students actually have any intrinsic motivation to show us their grittiness. And when I'm thinking about this, and I've got to say, like listening to Seth, listening to Kate talk about like executive functioning, it kind of hits me hard, to be honest with you. It hits me really hard because I was identified gifted at 7 and diagnosed with ADHD as an adult at 37. And I'm feeling all these struggles. I'm going back to these times where I just feeling like I'm completely out of space and my notebook's falling apart. And like nobody's ever thinking that I can really sort of help that situation. So I'm thinking about this within this context. We talk about grit and perseverance. And what I like to think about is why. I'm sitting here learning about an amoeba. Why? Why are we all learning about amoebas? I don't really care about amoeba. Nobody gets hyped up about amoeba, but maybe there's this thing where my grandmother passed away from cancer when I was in 7th grade. And maybe there's this reality that like, before I can cure cancer, I got to understand how a single cell organism produces, lives, dies, eats. And if I can understand that, there's a deeper level of complexity that I can then sort of aspire to, that then maybe that there's something in it for me. And if I'm not answering that question, what's in it for me, then we're here talking about grit for kids who will stay up till 3 o'clock in the morning doing complex problem solving. Granted, it might be Fortnite or Minecraft, but they're willing to show grittiness in these pockets, which means it exists within them. But what do we do when they get there? Especially when we talk about the low floor, high ceiling concept, sometimes we talk about grit and perseverance for critical thinking, yet we haven't given them any sort of that sort of scaffolding that Seth talked about for executive functioning within the critical thinking context. So are we going to ask kids right now, all right, class, we're learning about Antarctica. We're going to do a project where you're going to move your school to Antarctica for a year, and you got to plan for it and do this, that, and the other thing. Well, can we scaffold for that critical thinking? I live in Phoenix. What if we had a warm-up activity where we said, all right, you got a friend who lives in Alaska, and they're moving to Phoenix in July. What tips would you have for that kid? Because guess what? Our kids are not empty vessels. They've got knowledge they're coming to the table with. And now they're energized. Now they get a chance to sort of develop the scholar identity within that construct. And now they're much more comfortable doing the performance of critical thinking in this process because you've gotten them there. And to Kate's point, like, we're not going to be talking about transgender bathrooms if you did worksheets for the last year. We can't just make that kind of jump. Right? We got to make sure that we're building in these nuggets. Can my kids listen to understand? Can they speak to be understood? Can they disagree without being disagreeable? And when we could get there through doing these sorts of things on a regular in our classroom interactions, now we've got a foundation where we can start to feel like we've got a truly like safe space to have these discussions that do definitely spark critical thinking, but also don't end up having you be that one teacher that goes viral because your thing went way crazy. So
I love it. I love it. And I love it because it tees me up for this question that I think everybody can speak to, but I'm going to start with Seth because I want to do it through the lens of executive functioning. What we're all talking about, what we know is strength-based instruction, talent development. These are the gold standards for gifted and TUI kids, right? And so if that strength-based teaching incorporates the critical thinking of the asking of the questions, but hearing the questions, encouraging the questions, and we fold in what's meaningful and important to our students. Okay, so can you do that with executive functions, or how do those two work together? How can they support one another? Executive functions and strength-based teaching and learning.
Yeah, I mean, well, executive function just means to get something done. So strength-based teaching just means that ideally you're having a really engaging learning. You're providing engaging learning experiences to the kids you're teaching. And in order to provide these learning experiences, they have to execute on certain things. So like Colin was saying, like if you're going to create a plan for how to live on Antarctica, and I may have botched this a little, Colin, and you live in Phoenix, and you're trying to learn all these things within that context. So kind of as Kate was alluding to, so under this umbrella of content that you want to convey, how do you do that? Well, executive function just fits right into it. It's not that complicated. It is and it isn't. I'm not trying to act like it's simple, but it is not that complicated. It's a part of everything we do. The problem is that we assume that everybody the biggest problem is that we assume that it's a won't instead of a can't. Okay, so we assume that kids are being willful, that they're not trying, that they're being lazy, that they're choosing to be unmotivated. If they just cared about school and made a choice to prioritize it, then they would be able to execute. But we don't use the word execute because we're not thinking of it as executive function. We're thinking is that they willfully will not do what they're being told to do or asked to do. They are not being compliant, whatever. And this is not what we want to teach anyway. Why do we want this compliance? But we are in a system that says, we have these standards, we have this common core stuff, we have this curriculum. If we push the kids through these hoops, then they will learn the things, then blah, blah, blah. But that story is not the reality of the outcome of the story isn't what we think, which is that they will grow up to be educated people who can have a good life and contribute to society and what have you. So I don't even know if I answered your question, but they fit hand in hand, but we again have to forget everything we know. We have to even before we're thinking about the strength-based stuff, we have to think about the relationship. Is the kid in the classroom, I don't care if they're in kindergarten or if they're in 12th grade or what, do they have healthy and secure attachment with their teacher, with their school? Do they feel seen? Do they feel heard? Does what they say matter? So as Colin alluded to, are they being listened to? Are they being asked even what they think? And then are they being heard? Is it a democratic classroom? Is there agency? Is there ownership? Is there buy-in? And when we're doing curriculum the way we do it, there isn't often that, unless you have a seasoned teacher or a newbie who has been encouraged to do what they need to do within the context of whatever the curriculum is. Is there value in having great content and wanting to deliver certain things? Absolutely. Absolutely. It's how we do that that really matters. So the executive function just comes into play with whatever we're doing. So if we forget, the way we teach now is we have chosen to set up a system that says we have math class, science class, social studies class, language arts class, blah, blah, blah. So we don't, I think Kate mentioned the word project-based, somebody, or maybe that was Joan, somebody mentioned project-based. And like, if there's a project to create, well, that can include all sorts of disciplines, includes all sorts of executive function, and you as the teacher, as the guide, as the leader, as the collaborator with them, not the person above them, the person beside them, guiding them through a process of creating a project. And again, as Colin alluded to, that is meaningful, that has purpose, that matters to them. Then we can help guide them not only through the content, but the executive function skills. We don't even have to know that they're called executive function skills, the things that are necessary to create a project, to go through I love long-term in-depth projects. I just think there's so much room for using their strengths and their passions and their talents and their interests and their curiosities and doing something that matters. And so, and I'll shut up with this. One of the things that I do is called different.
I just wanted to say that we know that 2E kids very often get frustrated when classes end and they're in the middle of, their brain is like, they're
That's how we've constructed the system. You have 45 minutes for math, then you switch your brain to a science brain, then you switch to a PE brain. And yeah.
Right. So you wanted to say something, and then I have two questions I wanted to put to the panel from
I guess just to give somebody something concrete to you educators watching is that what I did, what I call it creatively differentiated curriculum. And what I would do is design curriculum. I love project-based stuff. And I would create curriculum where I had the core of the things that everybody, quote, should know. So for example, if we're teaching things about ancient civilizations, everybody should know certain things about ancient civilizations, that there are certain things that each of them have, right? And I want the kids to come away like having an appreciation for how interesting, how there's so many commonalities between so many people. And you can really see this when you're looking at ancient civ. But then you do passion projects. Then you might have a kid who wants to make a meal. You might have a kid who wants to study the battlefields and how they did that. You might have a kid who wants to study their religion and how that was done. And then you can have a museum. I'm just throwing one idea with the creatively differentiated stuff, but there's something called content process product. So for those of you teachers who have not heard of content process product or with environment, just Google those words, you'll find it. But it's how do we allow them freedom and choice within an area of study and agency and get buy-in and ownership, and not grade them on, you did this and you got this percentage on this and blah, blah, blah. It's like everybody's trying the best they can. So how do we grade in sort of a sane way? And I do not have time to get into that, but I just wanted to end with something concrete. Look at creatively differentiating whatever the curriculum says or the standards say. You can create something with some structure and lots of freedom. And that's what you want to do, is get that balance. And it's not easy, but it's doable. So for those of you teachers that are burnt out or that are new and are getting pressure from above to be a certain way, you will notice that you will see seasoned teachers close their door and do what they need to do anyhow. And Kate alluded to that earlier. That's basically what you're saying, right, Kate? Yeah, close the door and do what you need to do anyhow. Yep, okay, I'm going to do the standards this way. You know what those kids need. You are the professional. No, our culture does not value you like that. I need to shut up. I'm going to stop right now.
everything, all that you're all spitting pearls and nuggets of gold. It's all really important. I'm going to put these two questions sort of together. And then everybody, we're going to do like a 30-second round, like I don't know what that's called in the game show, but whatever it is, that's what we're going to do. So one question, I'm going to read both questions. How can we help adults believe their students can, in all caps, can, especially if we only believe in them rather than limiting them? And then what would any of the panels say about motivating teachers who can't even relate or understand the 2E and neurodiverse mind and perceives change as difficult and only applicable for the neurodiverse? So I'm gonna just say that I appreciate these questions so much and the vulnerability and opening yourselves up to ask those questions. So first of all, thank you. Great critical thinking, asking questions. And I'm gonna say that, I think if you're really wondering about relating to or understanding 2E, you're in a really good place right now because you need to do some research and you need to learn, because there are assumptions that everybody makes about 2E kids that either they're doing grade levels, so they're fine, or they're not doing well, so they're not engaged and they're not motivated, or they're doing well enough, so it doesn't matter. And really, they're none of those things. And I want to give the panelists a chance to do their 30-second response. So let's start with you, Joan. Go ahead. How do we motivate these teachers? How do we help them to learn? How do we help them realize that, it's going to be actually better once they do the work of learning about 2E?
That's a tough question. I think if someone can go in there and give them concrete examples of what to do. When I'm helping train teachers, I'm so tech focused. I go in there and I show the tech, and then I try to have a lot of the 2E kids, a lot of them are good with tech, not all of them. And then they can shine and they can share their expertise and be the experts and help the teachers. Very often the teachers can't keep up with all this stuff, but the kids, the 2E kids need a way to really take advantage of their strength. And there are a lot of them that are very tech savvy. So that's just my tech perspective. And then they might have a lot of different weaknesses. And often that helps make their life so much better, because then they're the expert and they go around and they help the teacher and they help the other kids, and everybody's good at different things.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. And one of the things I say to teachers when I'm teaching them, training them, is find the hardest kid to love them the hardest. That's the kid to sit with, find out about, learn from. Okay, Kate, 30 seconds, go. But unmute yourself.
In 3 words, unconditional positive regard. Seth talked about the importance of relational-based pedagogy. Do students feel connected? Are we assessing their feelings of connection and belonging in school? And to remember, when you're talking about supporting teachers and understanding 2E development, they're products of a neuroblind society. They're not taught about all these different aspects of development and how children are, about neurodiversity and how children are experiencing the world, to remember that teachers are a product of the system, and then to teach about how, without adequate supports, educators, we can commit educational malpractice and inadvertently cause harm, right? And so talk about, and you can start to have conversations then about trauma and systemic oppression, which happens so frequently with twice exceptional students whose gifts oftentimes mask where exceptionalities mask each other, right? In reality. And so to have patience that way, and again, just to summarize, see every kid through the lens of their strengths and their potential, and to build strong relationships, because when we have those strong relationships, we can hold children to high expectations while practicing compassion, and then the outcomes can be really quite magical.
Okay, through the first 3 words you said, slowly.
Unconditional positive regard. That's Carl Rogers. That's not me.
Yep, I know, but I want it out there. Okay, Seth, 30 seconds, go. Oh, this is fun.
Well, the one thing that I think is that that's very practical that I didn't mention that can help with the curriculum design. So I want to give teachers something practical, is that my driving question when I'm creating curriculum is, how can I make this class or this year or this unit or this lesson or whatever the most incredible, fun, coolest class ever. Like that's my thinking. So I just want to put that out there. You can write that down, put on a sticky and ask yourself that before every time you design a lesson or something, and ask the kids how you can make it the most incredible, coolest class ever. And then I had some other amazing wisdom that I was going to tell you, and I can't remember. Oh, one of the things that's inspired me the most is you can just get the old, I think it's still out there, the Autonomous Learner Model by George Betts. The framework in there is just truly incredible. And then back to the relational stuff, it's all about secure attachment and them feeling safe. And I did not mention emotional regulation. So we want them to feel safe and regulated and have tools around that.
Yeah, understanding.
I don't even remember what your question was, Julie.
Well, that's okay.
But there was an answer to something.
Colin, do you need me to repeat the answer? Can you bring us home?
Sure. So in my Thinking Like a Lawyer book, I talk about this a lot. This idea that these kids can't, I've evolved on it. I've evolved on these kids can't. These kids can't, when it's spoken by a teacher, typically doesn't mean these kids can't. It usually means that I have no clue of how to create the learning conditions such that all kids can. And really, embedded in that is we've got to make this shift from going from this concept of all that's completely imaginary and made up. There's no middle kid. I don't even know what that even is, to each. It could be overwhelming. I don't have time for all that. Literally, I've got 150 kids. I don't have time for all that. But you know what you do have? You got parents who are experts in those children. You might have a big brother who might be someone at that school that knows what's going on. You might have a lunch lady who randomly has a super tight connection with this kid. You've got experts on that kid, so you don't have to necessarily know the ins and outs of all the theory and all the research. But can you actually know the child? Can you actually communicate with that child? Have you ever considered talking directly to that child and asking them what they might need? They might not know, but they might know. They might have some ideas of what they might need. And this is the thing that always gets me. We got to stop trying to think that we got to wait until we get expertise. We can't do equity work until we get a PhD in anti-racism. Cut the nonsense. You don't need a certification in twice-exceptional kids to serve twice-exceptional kids well, because there's no such thing as the same 2E kid, the same way there's no such thing as the same kid, period. Get out of your head and start focusing on who's in front of us, who's right in front of us, and can you actually give the kid what they need at the time they need it? And that's it.
Awesome. Awesome, you guys. So, wow, so much wisdom here. And the sessions that these guys brought to Let's Talk 2E Virtual Conference for Educators are just a deep, deep dive and really incredible. So this is our second in our series. Our third will be on cultural diversity, and that will be on April 27th, featuring Joy Lawson Davis, as well as Wendy Behrens. And speakers, please, can you tell people where they can reach you? What is your preferred way for them to reach you for more questions? Seth, go.
Don't reach me. Don't email me. No, I'm just kidding. Good. Just my inbox is the bane of my existence. Go to sethperler.com and go to TFOS or the executive function summit.com. So
awesome. Joan, where can we reach you?
If you go to innovativespeech.com, I have a pop-up that says let's chat, and every day you can click on it and pick a day and time and I call you, and I do that with people all over for 15 minutes. And I'm on Facebook, I'm on all the social media. I have a group also, isttechsavvysolutions.com, a Facebook group that everybody is welcome to come join.
Awesome. Colin, where can people reach you?
If you go to thinklaw.us, you can check out the Think Law Family Experience, a whole new program that we launched for families, and you can request a quote for bringing our work, keynote speak, all that kind of stuff when it comes to school. And my book, Thinking Like a Lawyer, you can get on Amazon, or you can get bulk copies of the book through my website, thinklaw.us.
Awesome. And Kate, how do people reach you?
At soulsparklearning.org, and I'm Kate at soulsparklearning.org.
Awesome. And guys, these folks are all in the Teachers Lounge. So I'm sure every once in a while they jump in, tag them if you have a question or something you want to say, or you just love what they talked about. Spread the love. Let people know. Let's talk 2e.com. With understanding comes calm.com. If you're looking for me, I offer 20-minute free phone consultations to anyone, anywhere, and you can book those at julieskolnick.youcanbook.me. I'm sure Victoria Rose will put that in the chat. Everybody, thank you so much, and have a great night.
All right.
Victoria Rose will stop recording. You guys hang out for a sec.
Super fun panel, guys. I feel
For
privileged.
sure.
Yeah, it was awesome. I do see us still record. Oh, there we go.